My name is Samira Lewis, and you are listening to Chatting in the City. This podcast is an initiative from the VTRAX Lab, also known as Vulnerability, Trauma, Resilience, and Culture Laboratory at the University of Ottawa to explore mental health in the Black community. The podcast is a part of a larger Beacon Health project, which is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. Welcome, everyone. Couple months has passed since our last episode. Christmas happened, the New Year. Happy New Year to everyone. Hopefully that January has started really well for you guys. But how is your mental health doing? And I'm so glad that, again, we get to discuss more about that topic. My name is Samira Lewis again, and I'm one of the social mobilizers at the VTRAX Lab. I'm so excited for today's podcast. We have a very special guest today, and we're so excited to hear some words of wisdom, to get in the mindset of an expert, to enter the field of public health. This special guest, wait for it guys, has completed her postgraduate degree at the University of Ottawa. She obtained her diploma in public health and preventive medicine, as well as completed her master's in epidemiology. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for adjunct position and Department of School of Epidemiology and Public Health at the University of Ottawa, Medical Advisor of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, Dr. Dominique Élien-Masséna.
Wow.
Thank you for being on this podcast. Welcome. How are you doing?
Well, thanks for having me. Before I start off, I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Wishing great blessings for 2022, given the context, specifically health and peace with everything going on. But yes, thank you, Samira. I'm doing okay. I mean, things have been quite hectic. You mentioned the holiday season going through. It's been a quiet one, but a memorable one still. With family, it's always nice. So, yeah. How about yourself?
Awesome. It has been great. Enjoyed time with family as well, and just did with whatever I could with the restrictions and stuff. But yeah, really great. I guess we'll start off with the questions.
That's good.
Perfect. So the first question I have for you, Dr. Dominique Élien-Masséna, is, as an expert in the public health and preventive medicine field, what does mental health mean to you?
Okay, thanks for your question. So for one, I would say mental health needs to be defined. We often hear a lot of definitions. Mm-hmm. One I particularly like is one from the Public Health Agency of Canada. They define it as the capacity to enjoy life, to face challenges, to have a positive sense of well-being. And as you can tell with those initial factors, it's more of personal related well-being. And then there's the aspect of being integrated and interconnected within society and feeling respected also in society. Mm-hmm. So when you consider all those components of the definition, of what's related to positive mental health, it really begs you to wonder, okay, well, what are the things that facilitate that? And also, what are the things that become barriers to it? Mental illness, actually, which is the other extreme, is pretty much the alteration in your thinking, your mood, and your behavior that pretty much leads you to mental health distress, not being able to function. And with that in mind, you can envision or potentially think of things that could come in to not either develop mental illness or contribute to. And in public health, we often work and think a lot about determinants of health and social determinants of health, for that matter. Mm-hmm. And to quickly explain, it's social, economical, environmental factors and personal factors that come and interplay with an individual's health and even a population's health. Mm-hmm. And you can think of issues like income and social strata. You can think of education, employment, even childhood experiences. All these are considered various important factors, and many more. There's 12 of them specifically, but many more that actually influence our health. And part of that list is actually racism. And that's where, when you ask about how does it relate to me, being a second generation immigrant of a Haitian family, I have to say that it speaks more to my experience and experiences of my brothers and sisters, where if they've experienced racism, and that being actually one of those social determinants of health, which specifically speaks to those social and economical factors, you know that they have been impacted very much so, and can lead to that mental distress that I was making reference to. Unfortunately, though, there's a lot of research on the topic. I don't know if you've done some research around it. I know that because it's an interest of mine, we don't have specific data on racialized populations and mental health and the impact of mental health. There's definitely some interest out there and some studies out there, but some are somewhat dated, and some, aren't as robust as what you would find in other ethnicities, for instance. So what we do know or can say is that for immigrants, for instance, for those that have stayed longer, maybe between 2 to 20 years, there was one longitudinal study that explained that these individuals probably would experience more mental health than their counterparts who stayed maybe less or even more than 20 years. Yeah. And among those groups, some ethnic groups that have been identified with higher mental distress compared to the other ethnicities are Black and South Asian, ethnic groups. So that again speaks to a bit of what I can speak by experience, but also what the research is showing us. And with that, it makes you wonder, okay, well, how can we address it? How can we support our brothers and sisters in that way? And what are the things that we need to address when it comes to the systematic factors that are actually part of that?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. When you mentioned the determinants of health, I just remember that because that's one thing that we study a lot in health sciences. Like every single year that topic is brought up because, again, it's something that's very, very important. You mentioned, again, those 12 determinants of health. Do you think, I guess, in your research or maybe in your time just finding more and more interest into this, one or two, I guess, or just the key determinants of health that do heavily impact when we talk about mental health with each individual? Obviously, it's going to change case versus cases, but I guess globally, are there findings that this is more repetitive in terms of determinants of health?
Well, I appreciate your question because the determinants of health actually are numbered, and there's a reason for that. Yeah. Some have shown to have more impacts than others, and the one that I mentioned when it comes to income and social status is definitely it's considered number one. And when you are poor or living in poverty, there's definitely a lot of related stressors, not only just from the mere fact of not having your basic needs, but also the other diseases that can be caused by the fact that you're not getting the necessary nutrition, for instance. You don't live in a appropriate environment or home. You don't have the social supports. All these things that come into play in terms of being able to have your basic living necessities. Yeah. So definitely income and social status is part of it. And there's also something that has been described as the social gradient, meaning that the better income you have, education, and social status that you have, the better health that you can have. And if you don't, well, then you're pretty much at the other end of the spectrum. Yeah. And unfortunately will bear the health-related health outcomes and mental distress, as we've been talking about, that can come from that. So those are some of the determinants of health that I would say are important.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have listed more.
Exactly.
As I mentioned, unemployment is definitely an important one.
Yeah.
Social supports also is a very important one. And the list goes on. But I would say that those are the main ones that come to mind when you think of the top ones.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I've known you as a very, very hardworking woman. And so I guess my second question for you is how you're able to balance your work life, mom life, your me time without letting your mental health suffer.
Okay, well, sometimes I'll ask myself that same question, but but kidding aside, I think the way I would answer that question is threefold. One is the fact that I recognize that I have the supports I need. If I didn't have, for instance, a supporting husband, if I didn't have an outlet when it came to specific friends or what I call accountability partners, for whom I could, say, this is what I'm going through, or, how can you can help me, being able to actually reach out for help. Taking care of myself is the second thing. I've recognized that if I don't have, for instance, my time of prayer, meditation, if I don't exercise, and if I don't have sufficient sleep, that it does impact my well-being. And I mean, those are basic things that we probably all know, but we don't always implement. And sometimes we just need to put the systems in place or organize our time in a certain way to at least achieve those things. And lastly, I would say that one thing that helps me know that at the end of the day, I could be satisfied is if I know that I've worked on things or done things that I'm passionate about or that mean something to me. And, I have actually a young family, and, the fact that I know I've spent time with my husband, or that I've spent time with my kids, or that I was able also to spend time taking care of myself, let it be exercising or other, working in doing projects or things that I know that I am passionate about, or topic areas that I'm passionate about. I think that really helps me to know that, okay, I'm okay. Even though it doesn't always go as planned. If I could say I could check off, one small thing that I've done that speaks to those things, I could say that I've achieved my goal from that perspective, and helps me with, having positive mental health, essentially. Go ahead, please. I think I was.
Yes, I was gonna say, I definitely agree. Putting those systems into place and having people that can keep you accountable. I guess to follow up with that, how often is this something you do weekly, bi-weekly, every month, to have that balance?
That's a good question. To tell the truth, for me, it's a daily thing. I start off my day, if you will, writing what I want to do for the day in my agenda or whatnot. I'll have some priority items, but I'll also have those little things that I know if I could get into my day, will just balance things out. And that's where, if you will, the work-life balance comes into play. Knowing that, okay, I was able to achieve those things, also do what I need to do from a work perspective. And if there's other things of interest that I know I want to also engage in, that I get to do that as well. So it's not to say that I have a report card every night to say what I've done, but even from a mental note, to know that I've touched those points, really, really helps in terms of my mental well-being. Yeah, I'm definitely that type of person as well, putting things on my agenda. I have literally 2 agendas, one on my computer, one that I write by hand and stuff like that. Yes, I can relate. And actually, if I may add, one thing that I've also come to understand or realize is that I need to be honest with myself. And sometimes I'm not necessarily honest with myself, thinking that I need to push or whatnot. And that's when I need to take a step back. And I find that's when your accountability partner, can come in and really help you to bring perspective, and bring you a step back and reflect and pretty much start over. I think that pretty much is an important point. I think I would just add.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about honesty, though, I know for me, as I grew older and explored more of the things I loved and encountered a lot of challenges and stuff like that, along the way, I will have to admit that my mental health did suffer. But something I would also realize is that my context was definitely different than my fellow, friends that are different ethnicity, different background than me. And so as a Black woman, what have been, some of your mental health challenges that you have faced, you have encountered, whether along your career or just your life in general?
Okay. So I think, again, if I'm being honest with myself and honest with the people that we're talking with today, I have suffered burnout. And if some don't know exactly what that is, it really is having intense fatigue, where all your efforts are pretty much disproportionate to what you're actually trying to achieve or the results you're trying to have. And I was running through a period where I just had a lot on my shoulders and imposed pressure as well. And I realized that I was more reactive than proactive. So when that happened, I had to be honest with myself, but I have to admit it didn't come directly. It was because others who cared made the observations, and I had people that were pretty much stern with me to say, you know what, I think you need to stop and take a break. It was a bit hard on myself because of my personality, and also just because of what I felt could have been considered a failure. Yeah. But then when I was, again, honest with myself, acknowledging that I needed help, and I started to get that help, that's when I knew that, wow, okay, I really do need to take a break. I really do need to take care of myself and pretty much get re-energized, resourced, and to restart on the right foot.
Yeah.
So, thinking about also the things that kind of made it harder to actually acknowledge and actually do something about it, I would say, my own personal standards, I think they were too excessive or too perfectionist. And that's something that I've had to work on myself. The taboo even of talking within our community about having issues, if you will, or even mental issues, and relating it to something that you could just brush off, or it's nothing, it will pass, without really putting more importance to it or acknowledge it's something that we need to deal with and be cognizant about. And also, I would say, being a woman of faith, it was interesting to live through this experience where I thought, well, as a woman of faith, that shouldn't happen to me. But that goes actually contrary to what is to be the truth. In anything, that's what actually permitted me to get through, is by being a woman of faith. So I was definitely able to get the right outlook, the right perspective, and the truths that could also help support me and strengthen me through this experience. So, I really am appreciative of all the systems that are available to us. I'm thinking about not only my own personal supports, my social supports, but even the services that are available. I was able to reach out to specific supports from a medical perspective as well. And that really, all those taken into account, it was kind of like a multi-component approach or strategy to address what I was going through. And honestly, every component really had its part to support me through that process. So that's essentially how I would describe my experience as a Black woman, and understanding that there are some challenges, but it doesn't mean that when we change our outlook on things, it could be addressed differently.
Yeah, I honestly totally agree. I think those are great words of wisdom that you said there. Because oftentimes, like you mentioned, it's like instead of being proactive, you're being more reactive, and it's hard to just assess that ourselves sometimes because we're so busy doing the things of life where I gotta do this next, I gotta do this next, I gotta do this next. But there's so many things like key signs, like, okay, you're becoming more tired, or you're becoming more of this, and we don't like to address those issues right off the bat. And I think those can definitely have greater consequences to our mental health. So like you've mentioned, being honest with yourself is so important. Whether you're a student, whether you're an elder, it's so important to continue to be honest with yourself, continue to have that support and that good environment in seeking out those resources. Those resources are there for you. So it's so important to it might be scary and overwhelming at first, but you'll never know the outcome if you don't take that first step towards that healing process. So
yeah, and if I can jump in there, Samira, just to give a bit of a plug, because there are definitely resources out there that maybe people aren't familiar with. So for young people, for instance, there's the Kids Help a phone line, and they provide free services and could direct you to the specific services you need. As a resource, there's the CAMH, I'm running a blank, the Center of Addiction and Mental Health. They are specialized in this area. They provide many services, and they have many resources on their website. Also, I'm thinking for those who are university students, the ones I'm familiar with because I went to Ottawa U, Université Saint-Paul and Université d'Ottawa. So they have specific services available for students, from not only providing resources, not only specific services, but also counseling, which can be of great help, especially when you're at that peak or you're up against a wall and you don't know what to do. That could be just what you need to get through that and to potentially then have the maintenance in terms of tools and other resources that can help you to deal with not only that particular situation, but future situations that you might face. So
yeah, for sure. Besides the resources, do you have any last words you'd like to leave for our listeners with the podcast?
Well, I think it's not to be afraid to talk about mental health, not to see it as a taboo topic. Like any other organ we have in our body, the brain can also be impacted, and it's not different than any other organ. So we should be just as comfortable to talk about diabetes or cardiovascular disease as mental illness, let it be mood disorders or whatnot. So that's where I think when we do talk openly about it, then it becomes less of an issue, because then other people are living the same thing, and others can also redirect you in the right direction, and give you the supports you need, or at least direct you to the supports that you may need. So that's where I think there's definitely an opportunity there to be able to just be open about it, being honest with ourselves and with each other. I think that will just help everyone's positive mental health.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, guys, thank you all for listening to today's podcast episode. Thank you to our professional, Dr. Dominique Elgin-Masséna, for taking the time to share her personal experience, some resources, and all the other good words of wisdom you heard from her. And I'll see you guys in another episode. Bye.
Bye.